Welcome into Rounding the Bases, the podcast about culture and leadership with a baseball twist, presented by Community America Credit Union. My name is Joel Goldberg. We're starting to wind down things here on RTB for season 6. It's 2021 that's really filled up most of it. Actually, the season started, my podcast season, back in, I think it was April or so, with former Royal Alex Gordon. I actually have a guest today that did grow up a Royals fan, but does not live in Kansas City anymore, but a really, really cool story. My guest on this episode is Brian Roland, a social entrepreneur and self-proclaimed coffee guru. He's already got me there with coffee guru, who has unearthed the secret to a successful life. It's a simple recipe with just one key ingredient, and that's people. Turns out people are also the secret to a successful business, which has been the focus of his company, Abinity, since day one. As founder and chairman, Brian takes the corporate motto, "Perks about people," seriously. That part may not come as much of a surprise considering the model, which is designed to offer exclusive rates and corporate perks to employees. Less obvious, though, is Abinity's underlying social mission. By individually sponsoring hundreds of impoverished children and donating more than $1 million in humanitarian aid, Brian and his team boldly demonstrate how much success stands to be had if only you choose to focus on people. I love the mission. And of course, as I so often say, it's always about the people in every profession, whether it be baseball, whether it be music, whether it be whatever the industry. And I'm joined right now by a guy that grew up in the Kansas City area who is now in Scottsdale, Arizona. Brian, how are you?
I am doing awesome. It's a beautiful sunny day here in Scottsdale, and you're right, we're all in the people business. That's for sure.
And it's almost always a beautiful day in Scottsdale. Although I suppose when you're over 100 degrees, I don't know how you deal with that.
Yeah, well, I've gotten really used to the sunshine. Growing up in Kansas City and then spending another decade plus south, coming out here and having almost no weather was really strange. I was like, God,
Yeah.
there's something wrong with the programming up there. Like, where are the clouds?
So I want to ask you about this incredible company that you've run for so long. And I also want to talk about the journey, as I so often do with my guests, of how you got to where you did, because as is so often the case, this was, I don't think, what you were dreaming up as a kid in Overland Park, Kansas. And there's a music background and a journey there as well. But just for starters, tell me about what your company does and the unique name.
Yeah, absolutely. We offer perks, benefits, really of all sizes. We've negotiated corporate discounts on everything from pizza and the zoo to movie tickets, oil changes, car rentals, hotels, theme parks. And we put all these corporate rates into a mobile app and a website that we brand for the company. And we do that for companies like US Bank and MasterCard and a whole bunch of other Fortune 100s, as well as hundreds of smaller businesses and alumni groups and associations who are to offer perks to their people. It's been a really fun to be in. My and I are tech guys. We've been building software kind of from our house in Overland Park since we were teenagers, and in those late 90s years where we're starting to tinker with that stuff. And it turned into a business that we started in 2006, and it's been an incredible journey ever since that day. The company Abinity, the name Abinity, we started out with a different name, and the week I decided to plunge and go full time, got a nice little letter from a group of attorneys in New York City saying our company name violates this trademark that's registered. And we were new, and it was literally like my first week kind of taking the plunge into full-time entrepreneurship. So we spent several weeks brainstorming, and Abinity came to mind as this great way to communicate that our platform is an amenity that offers benefits for the people of the companies we serve. Abinity, a unique name we claim as our own and make a name for in our space, and that's what we continue to do.
It's a scary start when you think you're on your way and suddenly attorneys are already getting involved. Welcome to welcome to the
Yeah.
business world, I guess. But in the end, you end up with something unique like Abenity, and people obviously have loved it. Companies have loved it. So before we get more into Abenity, I want to ask you about growing up. I'll ask you a little bit of baseball stuff later, but I know for those that are watching on YouTube, they'll see the music influence behind you. I believe that you studied music in college, so that to me doesn't lead to a path, at least initially, that says Abenity or software or anything in that world. What how did you grow up? What were your aspirations?
Oh yeah, the Kansas City Jazz had me really pumped up as a teenager, playing my trumpet and always focused on jazz. It's what led me to Nashville. I did go to Kansas State University um, and then really wanted to get in the music business more. I think anybody that's working on an instrument specifically is basically grooming themselves for entrepreneurship. There's so much overlap between what it takes to um, experiment, kind of in the music, the process of making music, and then get to the point where you're drawing people into what you're doing, and there, you have to learn to play in a group with other people, and you need to blend in. Sometimes as a trumpet player, you're either blending in, sometimes you're blending in, and sometimes you're standing out, and those are qualities for the entrepreneurship journey. And most musicians that get pretty far end up kind of taking a back seat as they're letting the next generation rise up. As a successful entrepreneur, recently, that's just what I've had to do as well. And our business hit a point where it was time for me to hire a CEO and a president and COO to run the business, to keep it going, to focus on the next strengths the business needed, which was no longer my entrepreneurial strengths. And so music for me was great training for that. Ultimately, going to Nashville, doing some work in the music industry. The music industry itself is not an entrepreneurial environment, and a little bit of policy play in there, a little bit of red tape, lots of big companies running the show, especially back in 2000 when I was there doing that. The scene is changing now very much. Music industry has been rattled, disrupted by technology, as many of us know, and so that's ultimately what led me to say, all right, this is my thing. So I'm going to take a sales job and I outside sales job at 23, and started selling cell phones, which incidentally for Sprint from Nashville, another big Overland Park company though. And Sprint was kind of my big focus product at the time. So, all my roads lead me back to Kansas City, and my parents are out in DeSoto, Kansas, as we kind of halfway between Park and Lawrence. So it's been great.
With a son at KU right now, I know exactly where that. Well, I don't need to go to KU to know where DeSoto is, but let's just say that I have passed
You're,
through there on K10 many times, which
you,
you know that area well. But I mean, it's such a fascinating journey, Brian, because here you have this incredibly successful company, not to mention the good that you're putting back into the world, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But at one point, you have the music dream, and then you're in sales, and now here you are offering up these perks. And guess what? You say it's always about people. People love perks, by the way, too. Who doesn't like a
that's
good
right.
perk? How did you come to the idea of Abenity? Not the name, but the whole
Yep.
process. And how did that start? When did it start? How did you scale?
Yeah, it kicked off with that cell phone role that I left off with here, and I took a job in outside sales. My goal was to sell 30 phones a month. I needed to find one phone a day, essentially. And my boss is like, hey, the easiest way to do this is to go find a business that's got 50 phones, 100 phones, a couple hundred phones, and you work that deal, and then you close it. And that's the best way that's what we do. And I was like, well, I'm a 23-year-old straight out of music camp, and I don't know what CFO stands for. I don't know what COO stands for. And So I was like, I like people. I'm not sure about these businesses. So I took that same people theme, and I found out that big companies like Sprint offer discounts to employees of companies. So as an employee of PepsiCo or Coca-Cola, you get a personal discount for your family's use. I was like, I can talk to people about their personal phones. So I went and I set up in the break room at the Pepsi plant, Nashville, and I did the Coke plant too. And then I was like, I can just pick up the phone and call companies and talk to these HR people and say, if I send you a flyer, will you email it to your employees? So I started making my own flyers and doing that. My phone started ringing and led me to call my brother, who at that time getting his master's out in California. He is a electrical engineer from KU. Then he went out to UC Irvine to get his master's in computation arts and on top of his electrical engineering degree. I said, hey, will you build me a site that I can point people to because my phone's ringing off the hook? Sprint really liked the website we built, so their corporate account managers internally at Sprint started using them, introducing us to all these big accounts. And before we knew it, there were a lot more accounts these employees qualified for than just the Sprint phones we were representing. And we had one of those frustrating customer experiences with the Walt Disney Company where the Sprint information we provided was listed incorrectly, and it created a big headache for everybody. Corporate IT at Disney could not get it down in time. So after we resolved that, Disney built you a platform that managed these offers for you. Would that help you be more efficient internally so IT doesn't have to keep up with your dinky little employee perks? And they said that'd be cool. So Mark and I took the plunge. We spent about 9 months something, introduced it out the gate to my Sprint customers that yes, and gave it away for free a few times. And most customers were Disney, Oracle, and the U.S. Army. So out the gate, we had 1 million total employees from the company we could negotiate discounts on behalf of. And one day I said, hey, instead of being free, if I drop my logo and I just feature your company logo and you paid, I don't know, $100 a month, would you rather? And I'm just trying to build value, saying we could charge you, but we're not. And they said, oh, that'd be great. We'd love to pay $100 a month to have you drop your logo. I was like, are you serious? So that kicked off this managed services approach where we started focusing on the brand of the companies we serve and doing more and more white labeling. And today we have hundreds and hundreds of corporate subscribers and millions of members, turned into a really cool business.
Well, that's the beauty of these journeys, though, too, is that one, it very rarely goes as planned. And oftentimes that's in the best of ways, that it just takes these interesting turns. You did not start this thing with Sprint with any of this in mind. And suddenly you start seeing, wait a minute, there's some opportunity, there's some need, there's some interest. And oh my goodness, look at who these clients are. I mean, we're talking about iconic clients there. So I know this is normal to you now. If you're like me, I'll still pinch myself or try to remind myself to remember when I'm walking on the baseball field at Kauffman Stadium that this is normal life now, but this is what I dreamed of doing. This is amazing stuff. Don't take it for granted. And I'm sure it's the same way with you as well. But there had to have been some moments early on, if not now, where you say, oh my goodness, Disney, and I'm working with all these people, and I helped create that. What were those moments like for you?
Yeah, those continue to kind of hit at the most random times, especially as the entrepreneurial journey is. It feels like a video game where it's like, okay, you accomplish level 1, and then you're thrown into level 2, and you just die a whole bunch of times on level 2 until you figure out level 2, and then you're thrown into level 3, and then you die a whole bunch of more times, and it's just that over and over again. And it's really easy to forget, how hard you had to work for how hard you had to work for level 1, the value that all those initial things continue to build. And we have my very first customer that's with us is still with us years later. That's one of those that's like, wow, that's incredible. When you tell people that, we have metrics that are really normal. So we have 1,500 to 2,000 new people that join our platform every single day, and that's just a metric. It's not even a KPI for us because it just happens. It's not what we're focused on driving. And so for me, it's when I tell certain people that, they're like, "Are you 2,000 people a day? Are you serious?" And it's like it's a big number, and you stop and you're like, "Yeah, you're right. That's a big number. That's pretty. There's that many people that are eating for the first time with us on a daily basis." And then over my shoulder, these on the wall, if you've got video, that started with, at Sprint when I was selling the phones. I did well. When you do well in sales, you make good money. And for me, that was, within a couple of years, I'm making more money than my dad ever made. And it was kind of like, why? I wasn't married. If I was married and had kids with that kind of money, it wouldn't have gone nearly as far. But at the time, it was like, I have way more than I need. So why am I working so hard? Why am I pushing myself to these limits when, it feels like excess? And so I really had this why kind of moment. And when we went to Benedy, I told Mark, I was like, I don't want to hit another spot where I'm questioning what's the point, why. And so we started a Benedy really with this mission, so that for every input into the business, there was an out to a social cause. And that insulated me from those why moments, because I was confident as an entrepreneur that my brand would let me down. That happened right away, as we already talked about. The brand I picked let me down. My competitors would cause me headaches, and that's for sure happened a few times. And our products and services would let us down. When you're in the tech industry, I mean, they literally go down. And so you just don't want your identity in any of those things. And our social mission really gave me a why. What I didn't know was that as we started hiring people, our team would shape around that. I didn't know that would create this cultural alignment around a single cause, which would turn into a community of people. And we built the whole thing with a fully distributed remote team. So everybody since 2009 has worked from home, and and we've done it in a really healthy. We've built a really healthy culture as a result of this social mission. That ultimately, the biggest moment that I didn't realize was this social mission was healthy for me. It was healthy for my people. It was healthy for the clients and customers that would join us. But it was healthy for our sales process. It turned out to be a competitive advantage, so that when people are going and learning about us and they're side by side comparing other people in our space, many times the social mission that we have in place kind of tips them over the edge and says, we connect with you. We really like what you stand for, what you're doing. We're selecting you, Abenedy, for our corporate perks.
So let's talk about that before I get to my baseball themed questions. Is this why, this purpose that really every one of your employees are attached to, but not just your employees, as you were saying, anyone that does business with you gets to be a part of this greater cause. Tell me about the amount of money and just what that must feel like to know that at any given moment, at every given moment, you're doing something to help out in the world.
Yeah, well, it is really cool. From our support team, they're helping some people with their Disney World tickets resolve something. If it's a $100 Disney World transaction that they're helping to keep from a refund, well, that trickles down to several meals for the kids that we support, as far as the dollars from that go. And so it gives everybody a cause, a purpose in their daily work. We launched our impact report, which you can check out on abenedy.com just last year, but it defines every dollar that we've given, and we've just exceeded $1.2 million of total giving over the last 10 or 11 years. And we've we really on, it was stroking a check. We committed a percentage of our profits initially. We just arbitrarily, before we made any money, said we'll give 15% away. And so that's what we started doing. It was a check. It was something we did once a year. It didn't have much feeling in the stroke of a check. So I said, you know what, 15% is about 15% of a client program that's signing up with us is about the same as the monthly sponsorship for a child. So let's just convert that into sponsoring a child. And we started doing that, and that grew the child sponsorships. And then at the end of the year, with whatever was left over, we ran the numbers. That's grown to an awesome number, and we've focused a lot on microfinance and places dealing with extreme poverty, and just the provision of schools and clean water and various things that kind of all fall under the United Nations goals to eradicate extreme poverty by the year 2030.
It's incredible work. Congratulations to you and all your team. And on the Abenity website, you could see so much of that too, and all the different kids that have been sponsored and the different countries, and you get to meet some of these people too. So they're really cool storytelling elements to just attach this, bring this all together. So it's not, as you just said, a donation. Nothing wrong with a donation, by the way, either. But this makes it obviously a lot more personal.
Yep.
Let's switch to my baseball themed questions. Maybe it's this, maybe it's something else, but professionally speaking, what would you say is the biggest home run you've hit, Brian?
Biggest home run for sure. It's the social mission. We wrote down on a piece of paper in 2009 that we wanted to give away $1 million. And for guys that had not made $1 really yet in our business, that just like a crazy number. Looking and so hitting that $1 million of direct giving number, it was for sure our biggest home run and really fulfilling moment.
And the beauty of that home run, and I say this to others sometimes too, is that the ball hasn't landed yet. So either this home run is still going, or there are many more to come. How about a swing and a miss? Every entrepreneur has a million of these. A swing and a miss, and what did you learn from it?
I've struck out plenty of times. I'm always encouraged that like a mid 300 batting average is like amazing, and that comes with a lot of strikeouts to to have that good average. And so we, as software guys, we're always taking bets. We've been doing this 13 years total now. We've been taking bets on what app feature, what product. And when you take a bet in the software world, I mean, you're investing usually months of your time and resources toward this initiative. And we've had plenty of those where we're away with feeling like, all right, well, we accomplished what we set out to do, but it did not engage people the way we hoped it would. And so we learned from the process. The gain that we had was the process than from what we built. And there's been plenty of those. Another swing and a miss was kind of the first time we decided to take one of my ideas and we didn't have the internal resources to execute it, because the internal resources were focused on my ideas from several years prior. And so we said, well, we got the money to do it. We just don't have the resources internally and to deploy. So let's outsource it. So we outsourced it. We created it under a whole new brand. I chased it for a good 2 years. And it ended up just creating drag on kind of the main thing. I like it when Dave Ramsey says, keep the main thing the main thing. I think that's just good advice. And that was one of those moments where we lost a good chunk of money on that bet. We built like this Porsche that is just currently covered and in the garage, basically, of a software app, because it was just taking on too many resources. And ultimately, though, that was the awareness that it took for me to realize that Abenity was ready for a higher level of leadership, different kind of growth. And it's what motivated me to step out of kind of the key leader CEO role and deploy new executive leadership for Abenity, and kind of more take inventory of, my baby's grown up. What's my next thing going to be?
Yeah. Yeah. Hear that from so many leaders with their companies. Final baseball theme question, small ball. It's how your childhood team, the Royals, won in 2015. And then, yes, they hit some home runs, but we all know that the home run's the big moment, but small ball represents the little things. What are the little things to you that add up to the big results, Brian?
The little things for me, that is starting the business with a full routine has allowed me to be at home, and work from home and be present for essentially every day of my kid's life. And it's kept, I remember when I was selling phones, and my job was to do outside sales where you're supposed to go outside and not outdoors and see people face to face and around the country and do all these meetings. And I just said, no, I'm good staying in the office and using the phone and email, and even video early on when people weren't really ready to do that. How is it that you couldn't get somebody to turn on their video camera 2 years ago? And now every meeting's like, if you leave your video off, it's like, a slap in the face, like, oh, what, you not good enough, show me your face. And so, I was doing a lot of this. And so it's those little things that taught me, is like, you can be highly relational and handle things over the phone, which allows you to have a lot more time to utilize, flexibility and freedom to steward. And for me, just the presence with my family that gave me while building a highly successful, fast growing tech company was really cool.
Great stuff. I want to hit you with four final questions, what I call rounding the bases, and these can be kind of all over the place. Could be a little bit of anything or everything. You did just mention the name Dave Ramsey, and I think I was reading that he was one of your initial clients. Is that right?
He was the first client. So I'm sitting in the office for going through the Dale Carnegie kind of course, and his executive team was in the room with me. So his number two guys there and everything. And his daughter, Rachel, she was 14, 15 years old at the time. She's an author and a speaker now for him. And I said, guys, I'm all the way down the road with H&R Block. Like, they have 200,000 employees. They love what we do. They've accelerated us, but they just asked me if they could speak to one of my customers, and I don't have any. So would you guys be my first customer? So yes, those guys were our very first customer at the time. They had less than 100 employees. I think he's pushing 1,000 employees now over there. It's crazy.
So he was number one. So it's cool when you're able to tell some of those Dave Ramsey stories, and there happens to be a bit of a personal and meaningful connection there. Second question, as we round the bases, is I mentioned your music background, but it sounds tied into music as a kid that really stoked some of your entrepreneurial spirit and your entrepreneurial ways of just being out there and whether teaching others or playing some music as a young kid. Tell me about that.
Yeah, as soon as I had a skill that other people admired at some level, I was utilizing it for capitalism. I was trying to make money. So you would find me in the early 90s at the corner of 119th at the Borders store, playing Christmas carols on this exact horn that's hanging on my wall here. And I was always raising money for something, legitimately raising for college, or maybe a camp or something like that. But I was pulling in $70 an hour in tips on that thing, and I'd play for 8 hours straight. So I was having fun as a kid. It gave me new perspective for the kind of money you can make when you're just looking for people to give you $1 and there's hundreds of people passing by. So it's I also had built up a roster. It was pretty good size of trumpet students when I was kind of 14, 15, 16. I recorded a CD when I was 18 to raise me to go to Nashville, and sold copies to get myself over to Belmont University where I went. And so I've always had some kind of side hustle going.
Very cool. And I'm sure you pick up the trumpet every now and then and still play, right?
It's on my wall right here so that I will do less than I'd like, but I did yesterday.
See, I got to imagine though that there's, there's some release, there's some peace to always being able to go back and play some music in the midst of all the chaos of life. Third question as we round the bases. You got the Kansas City background, which you don't need to have to be on this show, by the way, at all. But the fact that, I mean, you and I did not meet because of a baseball connection. I think we both found it out after we connected
That's right.
here on the podcast, or just a little bit before. But you told me that you've got good memories of George Brett's 3,000 hit season.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I was. My dad worked for Mr. Kaufman, so we were in a regular rotation to get tickets, and I for sure got a George Brett foul ball that year. He hit at 3,000th hit, so I think that was 1992. I was 12-year-old kid, so that was a fun memory. It's sitting over there on my shelf right now. I can't prove it, but it happened. It's the ball.
I believe it. It's a foul ball. It's not the 3,000th hit ball. That's a different story. But you have that forever. You have the story forever, which
That's
is
right.
an amazing thing, especially for a young kid. Okay, final question for you. We'll sort of wrap all this up right now. And I always like to ask this to successful entrepreneurs: where do you want to see this go? What are the long-term goals, and how can people find out more about Abenity?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been unpacking kind of my idea as an entrepreneur over the last 10 years, which really led me not to have a role inside the company 2 years ago, which I would not have predicted. But now that I'm looking back, makes perfect sense. So on brianroland.com, I've been writing articles around that journey. I wrote an article called Entrepreneurs, Are You Ready to Line? I wrote an article about um, the rules of engagement for a full team, communication rules to have a productive team when everybody works from home. An impact plan for this so that you can kind of create a social mission of your own. All that's on brianroland.com. Thank you. Perfect. And
For those
Abenity.
watching, I just popped that up, brianroland.com, and then there's Abenity.com. Go on. Sorry, continue.
No, you're good. And really, I'm very excited by impact. It's like, where can we unlock the most impact? A way that we decided to do that was we financially as a family hit a place where it was time to decide how to invest in a new way. And I was talking to my wife. I was like, well, we can do this and go there once or twice a year and rent it out otherwise. And that's going to add stuff for us to manage as a family. We can just, put it in the stock market and let it grow on its own. And it's going to do its own thing and grow. Or we can use it for something completely different. Unlocks the opportunity for us as a family nearby to invite other people in and host certain things. And so while it may not have been the most financially aggressive way to utilize our resources, it unlocked a vision and impact for our family that we could deploy that as a family we'd be able to do with the other scenarios. I'm always looking for impact. What is unleashing the largest impact? And then the question really becomes, in what season of life you're in, what impact is your goal? What is your goal for impact? And this season of Abenity, it's been these kids we're sponsoring in World Vision, and I'm excited to see what new opportunities come along.
Well, keep up the great work. It's so powerful. And I was thinking too, and I'd read through some of the information that your team had sent that you're a proud girl dad with 3 daughters. So the lessons that you're teaching them in terms of the importance of giving and taking care of others will serve them well for sure for the rest of their life. That's what we all want to do with our kids.
Absolutely.
And so again, want to remind everybody, whether it is brianroland.com, we'll have it in the show notes, or abenity.com, ABENITY.com. That's how to find out more information. Brian, it's been great to meet you, to hear about your story and that journey from playing the trumpet at $70 an hour worth of tips outside the borders on, I believe that would be probably 119th in row, if that's where it was back then, certainly somewhere right around there, to
Right.
Nashville, to Scottsdale, and everything in between. Congrats on all of your success and so much more to come, and the impact that you'll continue to make, and appreciate you coming on Rounding the Bases.
Absolutely. Thanks, Joel. This was a lot of fun.
Thanks, Brian.